Okay, Scribbling Sage here. What I want to talk about now is this tendency by the left to make these Nazi comparisons or attempt to make these Nazi comparisons to Trump. I think that is a huge mistake, primarily because we are so far from there, and there's been no intentions expressed of that. There's been nothing of that sort. And when you make those sorts of over-the-top comparisons, then people look for those connections. They look for the actual proof of that. They look for death camps. They look for gas chambers. They look for World War. So it's, to me, even the racist comparisons are taken a little too far, because there's plenty of evidence that he's really not a racist. I think he has more disdain for the regular working man and the poor than he does anybody else. And because other races, minority races, tend to fall into that category, into the poor and disadvantaged category more than white people. I think that's why maybe he looks racist, because he just said, I think he probably loves rich people, rich blacks. Because, I think if you're going to make any charge, that's the charge to make. And I think the real reason the Nazi thing is, I would even say it's a dangerous comparison to make, is because it's tantamount to crying wolf. Because if you make that comparison, if you draw people, and I understand why we do that, that's an easier way to say dictatorship, authoritarian rule, whatever. It's easier to say Nazi, because more people understand that term than probably understand authoritarianism, or can speak it, apparently. But I think that's our biggest threat. I think what we should be warning about is an authoritarian sort of regime, and not ironically in the form of Vladimir Putin in Russia. That's actually why conservatives, I believe, many conservatives, many Trump-supporting conservatives, seem to want to not only look the other way when it comes to Putin, but they actually openly admire him. And I think this all comes down to the immigration issue, and specifically, and this is the thing, sure, there is some desire to keep out people of color and to not change the demographics of the country, and to prevent white people from being the minority. I believe there's something to that. I believe the more fundamental issue is radical Islam. And that's why I believe people support the strong arm of Putin, because I believe he fears that happening in Europe. He fears Europe being taken over by Muslims and then posing a threat to Russia. And who knows, in this day where there's so much disinformation and everybody's got an agenda, it's so easy to post video of some dramatic event and make people think, oh, it's so bad. This is what's happening in Europe, and who knows? Or is it really as bad as what some people say over there, or is it not? It's hard to say, but there's obviously something happening there. There's obviously a lot of immigration, and it's Muslim in nature. How much of it's radical, I don't know, and that's the real issue, is that people tend to, the right tends to over-dramatize the radical element that is coming along with the peaceful Muslims. But anyway, we really don't know. It's hard to know how big the threat is in Europe. But to me, that's what is behind the kind of love for Putin that you see with many Trump supporters. And I think it's the fundamental reason he was elected. There's a fear. And in this country, I think it is misplaced to a large degree. You hear conservatives talking about, Sharia law being imposed, and we need to legislate against Sharia law. I mean, how do we already have laws. How do you legislate against? It's ridiculous. But you have to understand that's what's driving this. I believe that's what's driving this. And many Christian conservatives have decided to get into bed with Trump, justifying his obvious unchristian behavior throughout his life and unchristian, treatment of people, justifying that with the idea that God used flawed men in the Bible, and he did. There's no doubt that in the Bible there was plenty of flawed characters that did God's work for him. But that's the deal they've made. To me, this all comes down to there is a class of civilizations, a holy war, if you will. There's going to be some sort of showdown with radical Islam, and maybe Islam as a whole, unfortunately. That, to me, is what this is all about. So to me, the biggest fear and where the concentration needs to be, and see, this isn't only left or right. Right now, everybody's focusing on Trump because he is the clear and present danger to the rule of law and to, our basic civil rights in some cases. Not that he's done that much in that direction yet, but there are no doubt some unpleasant seeds there, some unpleasant hints of, where he may want to take us. And and I think another thing too, we got to be we have to be careful not to question motives and to think there's some, and that's where the Nazi thing, that's where the Nazi comparison falls flat to me. I try not to question motives, and people can get off track, but that doesn't mean they have bad motives. This means they're wrong. And I think that is the case with Trump and many of his supporters, is that they see a threat that they have blown out of proportion, but now they feel like we have to do whatever we have to do to fight that threat, and that's where you can fall into authoritarianism. But it's also a problem for the left too, because the left is, for many years now, has been wanting to smash all dissent. And if you dare say anything against their protected people, their protected minorities, then you need to be shut down. You need to be silenced. That's not where we need. That's authoritarianism. I'm sorry. We need to grow a thicker skin. We need to grow a set, so that things that just offend us, that make us uncomfortable, we can just shrug off. Because there is a big difference between somebody questioning the way I live or something I believe, and somebody actually doing something physically to prevent me from living my life. And yes, I'm talking about the whole transgender, homosexual movement. Races, all of it. We need to be able to draw a line between when somebody is just, disapproving of who we are, even if it is who we genuinely are. Because I don't question that. If you feel like you're a certain way, then I can't question that. But if somebody doesn't approve of that, should they really be silenced? This battle has to be about preserving rights. It can't be about defeating Trump, because there's a risk, and it could be in a reaction to Trump. There's already a tendency on the left to be authoritarian. Well, now in reaction to Trump, I'm really afraid that we could go to an authoritarianism on the left, where they just are going to shut down any dissent from the right because they don't want Trump to happen again. Well, we can't have that. We don't need either of those. That's why to resist Trump, it isn't about just getting rid of Trump. and complete the thought. That is why many people voted for Trump in the beginning, and that's why people are like me, that if we could keep him under control, I fear the other side more than I fear Trump to a certain degree. But both sides could go in the wrong direction, if you know what I mean. We need to preserve rights. We need to find a middle way. We need to find a way of preserving rights without trampling on the rights of others and not shutting anybody down, even if it's Alex Jones, even if it's somebody who makes some of the outrageous claims that Alex Jones makes. What are we afraid of? We say, well, he's obviously peddling conspiracy theories. Well, okay, but then we have to counter him with truth. Don't counter him by shutting him up, because that looks like there is something to what he's saying. If you let him speak, and I understand there's a difference between our First Amendment rights, which only have to do with the government curtailing our speech, and a private company such as Twitter or YouTube curtailing somebody's speech. I believe we need to stand for the spirit of the First Amendment. Free exchange of ideas. Let everybody have a platform. Let the market decide. Let the people decide who is right and who's wrong. The reason you have to stand for individual rights and minority rights, even when it's a really obviously nut job minority, is because how do you know that at some point in time the majority may get led astray? Some rogue idea, some errant view could take over society, and the majority of us fall for that. Well, if we've already set the precedent that the majority rules and the other ones we're not going to give the other ones even a voice, well, that just predisposes you even more to go down that wrong direction. You always want to preserve the minority views, because someday the minority view could actually be the correct view. We're falling into this idea that what the majority of us want is how things should be, and the other ones just need to shut the hell up. That cannot be how we go. That's why I'm a libertarian. We just need to live and let live. Otherwise, we're going to end up with an authoritarian regime of either the left or the right, I believe. Obviously, the clear and present danger is from the right at this moment. But we could very easily have one from the left. We need to all stand for the preservation of the rule of law, our institutions, the truth, free exchange of ideas, which means the First Amendment and the Constitution. There's no other way. The truth is in the middle. The truth isn't to the right or the left. The truth is right there in the middle. We just need to stand for it.